Hey everybody, welcome to Worship Music Conversations, where we talk to worship musicians on campus about their worship music experience. If we haven't met yet, my name's Robinson. I'm the worship music coordinator for Spiritual Life. And today we have the privilege of talking with my good friend JJ Cantos about how he's experienced God through his worship music journey. So let's talk. JJ, bro, thank you so much for joining us here today, bro. Tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us who may not know who you are.
Thank you for having me, bro. Okay, so something about myself. So I feel like most people know me about like my music side, my leadership side, on La Sierra. But stuff I actually like to do at home is kind of like I don't know, a lot of random stuff like cooking. When I have the chance. I watch a lot of YouTube. Recently, I've been into like making my own coffee. So I've been doing that like every morning. Trying to exercise, watch sports. I try to keep up with sports too. It was kind of like a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Wherever I have time. But yeah, it's kind of and video games, obviously. A lot of that.
Obviously.
A lot of that, and so it's kind of just like a little bit of everything. Depends on how I'm feeling. But I'd say those are probably the main things right now.
I vibe with that. That's pretty good. JJ, tell us a little bit about your role on campus, especially for worship music.
Right. So currently, or at least for the past 2 quarters, I have been the first service music coordinator. And basically what that does is every week I'm in charge of organizing a praise team that will go ahead and do a song set for first service.
Right.
And some weeks it may be a bigger band, some weeks it may be a smaller band. Some weeks we're going to be introducing new songs. Other times we're going to be doing songs that we've done before, so that our community can really learn the songs and connect with the songs. And so, but currently I'm also in the process of transitioning into a new role.
Yes.
Assistant chapel director.
Hey.
And so, yeah, so that was, I just got notified of that pretty recently.
Right.
And so, but for the past 2 quarters, I was the first service music coordinator.
Let's go. It's been a blessing to work with you, bro. Tell us a little bit more about the part of you that is a worship musician. How long have you been a worship musician?
Right. And so, I say like a good estimate for being like a worship musician is probably about 6 or 7 years. While I've been doing a lot of other music related things outside of worship for longer than like 6 or 7 years. I think 6 or 7 years is about the start of like my freshman year of high school is when I really started getting into it, getting involved.
Okay.
So yeah, it kind of doesn't feel like it's been 6 or 7 years.
Time just flies like that, huh?
Time just fly. Yeah.
That's awesome, bro. Now, in your 6 or 7 years of being a worship musician, what do you love most about it?
Oh man, so there's so many little things that I like about it, like a lot of small nuances that you encounter, and you're just like, whoa, that was like super cool, right? But I think if I were to like sum it up, it would be that wherever you're experiencing worship music, whether it be like in your car, in the library, your room, like which is your AirPods on, or your headphones on, or if you're actually like in church, right? Wherever you are, there's like, at least for me, like there's a connection, right, to the song and the worship leader. And so when I hear and feel that connection, it's almost like the worship leader is kind of inviting you to be a part of like that moment or that experience. And what that does, it makes you feel like there's no barrier between you and who's leading the song, or you and whoever's on stage, or you and maybe your peer who's like leading worship right next to you. Like it feels like there's no barrier. It feels like they're all together.
Right.
And in that moment, and like nothing else kind of matters, or it's almost like time stops, but it really doesn't.
Mm.
Like it's kind of a hard feeling to describe. Um, but whenever I listen to worship music, wherever I'm, I feel that connection,
Mm.
like almost every single time. Um, and so, especially during a part where you're listening to the words, and you know the worship leaders singing about an experience, and the lyrics connect
Yes,
you to
yes.
experience, right? And it makes you think like, wow, like this person who's singing, like they've been there before, they've been in my shoes, or like we've gone through similar experiences, and this is how they're expressing themselves, right?
Love
And
that. Love that.
so that's all like happening in this moment, right? And in this experience.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing, the feeling that I get when wherever I'm listening to worship music. And I hope that to whoever's listening, if you're a worship musician and you actually lead at a church, or you go La Sierra and you lead there, I hope that like this is something that you can kind of like internalize, and that you can maybe create that feeling for someone else.
Mm.
Uh, and to that someone who hasn't experienced that or doesn't know that experience, um, I hope that it's something that you can find,
Mm-hmm.
um, because that's where music kind of changed for me. That's kind of where worship music changed for me, is when I found that. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Love that.
that kind of sums it up.
JJ, thank you so much for that. To piggyback off of that a little bit, tell us a little bit about your journey in becoming a worship musician. Like, how did you get here?
Yes, the
And then
journey.
also, like, maybe to like tie that off, tell us a little bit about where God revealed himself to you. Like, what was that moment as a worshiper where you're like, God is here with me in this? Like, tell us a
Yeah,
little about that.
yeah. So this is okay. So I guess those will kind of combine like all three aspects.
Uh huh.
But so I started off my first music experience, and kind of when I'm talking about this, like my general music experience and my worship experience kind of like are intertwined in a way.
Mm.
Um, and so the first experience was when I started playing violin in the first grade. I guess that's something that maybe like people might not know, is that my first
Yeah.
instrument I've ever touched, and took lessons for, was the violin. And
A.
so I started that in the first grade. And also, that's for some of you who've heard me talk about my favorite instrument. My favorite instrument is actually a stringed instrument. It's the cello. And so I really like strings.
Yeah,
So shout out to all
gotta
you
love
guys
those
who play
cellos.
strings.
True. Shout out to all the string players right now.
Yes, they're awesome. But yeah, so that was my first instrument, and so I took lessons for about 2 years, and it's actually something I really enjoyed. Although it was a long time ago. I remember after school I would have my lessons, and then after I had my individual lessons, I would go to like the group lesson that was with like the older kids,
Mm.
and like I would like sit in and just like listen to them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up being able to play with them and perform with them. So it kind of made me feel good that I was like, oh dang, like I'm good enough to play with like the big kids, you know.
Nice.
And so I did that for about 2 years, and then in the third grade, I believe it was like the summer, like going into third grade, I think. Um, I went to Camp Cedar Falls, with La Sierra University Church, and it was kind of like a retreat that was happening for about a weekend.
Mm.
Um, And so, like, obviously, like, I didn't remember much of the program that happened during the day, but I did remember that there was like the song service and the worship in the evening, right? And so I remember being in there and kind of like sitting at the back, you know. I was with my family, I was kind of shy. Um, but I saw the worship band off to the side, and that's where like the guitars were standing, like the
Yeah, yeah.
keys were standing, but that's where also like the percussion and the drums were set up, right? And so I would just like lock my vision onto like the worship band. Like I wasn't really paying attention to anything else. I was just like locked into like what was happening with the band, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't remember much, but I remember that my cousins like knew all of the members of the band, right? And I was like super interested in like wanting to like just like look at the drums, like touch the drums, like all the percussion stuff. Like I was just looking at all of that. And so during one of the song services, or like right before the song service, my cousin, one of my cousins, I think, brings me to like the guy who was like playing in the band, and he invited me to just like sit next to him while like they were doing the song service. And to me, that was like the coolest thing in the
That's
world.
awesome.
Um, and so that's where like it sparked my curiosity to like play the drums, right? And so a little while after, like another like really like faint memory is that my dad was like driving me home from somewhere. And on the way home, we stopped by like this random music store. And I mean random because like you wouldn't be able to see it, or like you wouldn't be able to spot it from anywhere, right? And so we stop and then we go in the music store, and then my dad asked the person at the front, like, hey, like, do you have anyone who teaches like drums? And they're like, yeah, we got a guy who can, who teaches on Wednesdays. And so that's when he signed me up for drum lessons. And I was like, oh shoot, like I'm gonna take drums. And I was like super
just
excited.
like that.
Yeah, but that meant I had to like drop the violin because I didn't want to play the violin anymore. I just wanted to play the drums. And so that's when it kind of started. I bought like my first pair of sticks. I would just play them around the couch, whatever, just hitting random things, and then started drum lessons. And that was kind of it. I kind of just did the lessons for like a pretty long time, up until like when I was in high school, and then I kind of stopped taking lessons. But yeah, I started in third grade. I took lessons, and then my first real worship, like praise band experience, was in the seventh grade.
Okay.
So this is kind of where the worship music avenue kind of starts for me. They were having auditions for praise band, right? They're like, hey, if any of you guys play the guitar, play the drums, play the bass, sing, you should come and audition Friday after school, right? And so I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try out. I'm gonna try out for drums. And before this, I didn't have any band experience. Like I would just like play like at lessons and play in my room. And that was pretty much it. Like I didn't do much else. And so when I walked into the chapel and they're like, hey, let's play these songs, I was like so scared, like super nervous. Also because the praise leader, or the praise team leader for the junior high, was actually Kevin Spire at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so I remember him emailing me the songs, like I think, what's it called? Like during one afternoon. It was, and I think one of the songs was Blessed Be Your Name. I don't know if you know that song, Robinson, or if you remember. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I remember like trying to learn that song. I'm like, okay, I got this part, and it's like, okay, now I'm going on to the next part. And so that was like my first like real experience. And I messed up like so many times. Not only did I mess up, but when I actually like got it, like they told me to like play something different. And I was no, I can't do that. Because I didn't know how to improvise, right? And so that was my first like real like experience. And so there was a couple other like drummers there too. And so we would just like rotate throughout the year, each Friday. And so every Friday, like I would be like playing worship songs, right? In chapel. And so I kind of did that for kind of throughout junior high, and I was bad. Like I was not good. Like I kept messing up. I get so nervous. Like I didn't know how to like improvise. Like I didn't know like any of the ins and outs of music at all, regardless of drums. Like I kind of just did it just to get by, and like I didn't have any like connection to it, right? And so I did that throughout junior high, and then I entered high school, and then the school's chaplain came up to me and was like, hey, like you're about to enter into high school, and I want to ask you if you want to join our new campus ministries team."
Mm.
And so I was like, "Oh shoot, like me, like I had never been a part of like any type of leadership other than like class office and stuff like that. But in terms of like ministry, like I did not do like that was like my first like real experience doing that, right?" And so I said yes because I thought it'd be a great opportunity. Um, and so I said yes, and then we had our first meeting like before high school started, and it was like a bunch of upperclassmen, like a bunch of people who are like super popular as well, and like we're experienced in leadership. And then there's me, and I was just like, "Oh shoot, like I don't know if am I in the right place." And so we did that, and he introduced me. He's like, "Oh yeah, this is JJ. His main role is going to be with music, and like he's going to be like one of our main drummers, and blah 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 blah." Right? And so that's kind of started my freshman year, and so I kind of like did those little experiences, kept playing chapels, and kept doing the campus ministries thing for about like pretty much throughout high school. And then I realized this. I kind of went into a lot of detail, so I'm sorry to people who's listening who think this.
No, don't be sorry, bro. You're good. You're good.
This is really long. But my first real like experience, like big experience, was junior senior Bible camp, which I feel like happens for a lot of people. But I think for me, like it wasn't like my like things took like a complete 180, but there was definitely like a change afterwards, not just with like me and like music or me and like ministry. It was just, I feel like me and like kind of like my personality, like I didn't really have many out of school connections. I wasn't the most outgoing person. So a lot of things changed, but anyways, like they were like, "Hey, like you should try out." So this is my junior year, right? It's like, "Hey, you should try out." And Chris Jordan was in the grade above me, and he was going to play drums. And so I didn't want to try out against him because I was like, he's like super good. And I also wanted to like be a part of the band. And so I was like, "Yo, what if I try out for bass? Like maybe that would be cool." And so I remember the night before the trial, I was up to like 3 a.m. Like practicing the songs.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And so on Friday, it was a Friday in like my junior year. We go to Loma Linda University Church, and we tried out, and it was a lot of fun. And then so we did that, and a few weeks later, I get a text from Joe Cordero, and he's like, "Hey, bro, like you made the praise team, you made the junior senior praise team for bass."
Wow.
And I was super excited. Like it was like it felt like so like I don't know. It was just like such an exciting feeling, right? And so he texts me, and then he sends the songs and stuff like that. And I just started practicing like the whole Christmas break. I was practicing, like the songs on bass. And we go to junior senior Bible camp, and I don't know anybody. Like I don't know anybody. All I knew was like my friends from La Sierra, and same with like the first rehearsal too. Like I went there, I was like, I only know like Chris, Ashley Avila, like the people from my school.
Yeah.
And so that was pretty nerve wracking for me because like everyone kind of knew each other, but like no one really knew me, and I didn't really know anybody. And so so going there, I was like in a situation where like I was kind of like really, really shy. And I wouldn't consider myself like a super shy person, but in that setting, I was like super shy. And so, but what helped me was like the aspect of like leading music together. It was easier for me to talk like when we were talking about like the songs, or talking about like, "Oh, hey, like you did a really good job there with like this." And so I guess like when I said that like my life kind of like changed, it kind of changed in like that I kind of learned to like, I don't know, be like in moments where I felt like more shy and more like reserved, like I could figure out ways for me to like still like um to still connect, right? And it was through the music.
Yeah.
Um and so obviously like that weekend was like super fun. I made a lot of really good connections. It's where I met like some people that like I never would have met if I didn't go.
Mm.
So I'll kind of fast forward this a bit, but yeah, from there I did the same thing throughout high school. Tried out for senior year, which is where me and Robinson
That's right.
were able to lead together, which was super fun.
That was super
I started participating in more like other churches programs, other schools programs, and keep building those connections, right? And so I did that throughout all of high school, and then after high school, it was kind of like uncertain what I was going to do with like this music thing.
Mm.
Because for most of you who don't know, I actually did not go to La Sierra like as my first choice.
Mm.
I was actually at another university before La Sierra, and so in the fall of 2018, I was actually a freshman at the University of California, Berkeley. Shocker, like if people don't know that and they're listening to this, they're probably like, "What?" But yeah, so I was a student at UC school, and then after about like a month, so about like 4 or 5 weeks, I actually came back to La Sierra. I was able to register and start fall of 2018 at La Sierra, and so that's kind of like a whole nother story. But what I'll say is that like, church and my music life, my worship music life, like all of that together was a big decision in me coming back. And so I won't go into too much detail, but that was a big thing. And then yeah, at La Sierra, I just I was able to get involved. I knew Gerald from I think it was like One Life of 2014 was when I first met him, and my sister went to La Sierra for 2 years, so I knew a lot of people in her grade who were involved with music and stuff like that. And so I remember I was like, "Hey Gerald, like, can I be on like the praise team for La Sierra University?" Yeah. And I saw him in the cafeteria. And he's like, "Dude, you didn't even need to ask." And so that was like
that was
like a really cool experience. But awesome. Yeah, and so I did that throughout my whole freshman year. And then Dara, who was the previous first service music coordinator, came up to me and was like, "Hey, like, would you be open to being the first service music coordinator for next year?" And I said yes. And so in the spring of 2019, spring of 2019, I kind of trained under her, and she taught me the ropes. And that's basically it. That's like the journey. And so
here you are.
Yeah, that was long.
Yeah, well, that was great. JJ, one more question, diving a little bit more into that. Throughout your journey, where would you say is the point that God revealed himself to you? Like, where did God say, JJ, like, this is where I want to be with you?
Yeah. Dude, I think, I feel like, at least when I was younger, I felt like a part of like being like a Christian and being a follower, was that like I needed to have like this super like huge like experience or breakthrough or testimony or experience or something like that, right?
Sure.
Which is like, like all the glory to God, like if that happens, right? Like, because that's amazing. Like there's so many amazing experiences that happen within people's lives that really like change them for the better.
Yeah.
But I'm also like sensitive to the fact that like there's a lot of people who haven't found that experience or that connection. And so like for me, like I can't say that like there's a moment that sticks out where it's like I had one of those super huge like testimonies or big experiences, right?
Sure, sure.
I almost felt like kind of like, oh man, like I haven't had like this experience. Like does that mean like there's something wrong with my spiritual walk? Is there something wrong with me? Or is there something wrong with like, you know, um like how I'm behaving, like my faith? Like I kind of like question that a little bit, here and there. Um but then like I realized that like God had revealed himself like in so many other ways
Mm.
that are just as have been just as impactful to me as if it were to have like one huge like experience or testimony, right?
Mhm.
And so I believe now that that's just all part of his plan, right? Like he's going to reveal himself in a way that's going to impact you the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so what that looked like to me was like throughout this journey that I just described, like I met so many like great people and made so many great connections that it was in those relationships, in those connections, in those people that I saw God.
Yes.
And so like I guess it's kind of hard to explain, but like in every like relationship and every friendship that I built, like in every like experience where I walked away and I was like I really liked what that person said, or they did such a great thing here, or that was such a great piece of advice. Like all those like little things that happen in like conversation or just your day to day, like those are the things where I see God the most.
Right.
Um, I guess one example that sticks out in my mind right now is that my drum teacher,
Mhm.
um, he's been like he's like one of the biggest examples that I've seen God through.
Mhm.
Um, because like it was throughout like my journey in music that not only did I learn about music itself, I kind of just learned about life, right? Um, and he would always give me like such great advice, through every like encounter that I had with him. And so I always like walked away with like, wow, that was like really impactful.
Mhm.
And so I guess like to stop myself from rambling, like I see God through like the relationships that I have,
Mhm.
um, and the connections that I've built. Because like especially with worship music, right? Like worship music was one of the biggest avenues where I was able to build those extremely like meaningful like connections,
Definitely.
relationships, right? And I try not to take any of those for granted because they can become like just a part of your everyday life, which they are.
Mm.
Um, but without those experiences, without those relationships, like my life would look a lot different. Um, and I wouldn't have been able to get through the really like tough times or the ups and downs if it wasn't for those relationships that have been put into my life. So
Mm.
that's kind of where I've like seen him the most.
I love that. I love that of so much, JJ, because like it establishes that mentality of like worship is not just a single experience, you know? Like it's not just one single spiritual high that brought you to God. Like it's an everyday thing, the little things, the small details that remind you every day, that like,
Yeah.
God is with me in this. I love that. Thank you so much, JJ. Hey, is there anything that you would want to say to any worship musicians or worship lovers who are listening to this right now? Just any closing remarks?
Yeah. I'd say that I think that I guess the one thing I can say is like not necessarily directed just to worship musicians.
Mhm.
I think this is directed to anyone who wants to serve,
Yeah.
anyone who's passionate about something. Um, that in whatever capacity and whatever you're passionate about, um, whatever gift or calling like God has placed like upon you, like use that to the best of your ability to serve.
Mm,
Uh, you know, like I guess like don't ever like feel like you can't serve
yeah.
because you're not ABC or XYZ. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of people who like don't play music, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they see that like, oh, like they're serving with music. Like, oh, do I have to serve with music? It's like, no, like you can serve in whatever way you want, like whatever, whatever you're passionate about, whatever hobby, like you can serve in that way.
Right.
Um, and so it doesn't just go out to worship musicians. It goes out to, if you like writing, if you like, um, you know, like making things, like you're a hands-on type of person, you like to speak, you like to do spoken word, you like to write poems, like whatever like form of, you know, expression that you have, like, you know, use that, like, you
Right.
know,
I
it's like
love that.
it's just as, you know, it's just as impactful and
Yeah.
just as meaningful as is like someone who might be doing worship music, right? But if it is worship music, then that's awesome too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I love that because like that reminds us that, you know, music alone is not worship. You know, like worship is praising, you know, praising God through whatever talents He may have given you, not necessarily just music. So thank you for that, JJ.
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much. Hey, if people want to continue this conversation with you, how can they reach you? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, so there's a few ways. I'd say the biggest things would be Instagram, email, phone number. Um, my Instagram is just JJ Cantos. You know, nothing special, just my name. Um, but if you happen to have my email or phone number, like you can also use those things too. Um, so and yeah, like any way that's easiest for you to reach me, you know, use that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, JJ.
Thanks for having me, bro. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's worship music conversation. We hope you were blessed by this. And if you'd like to continue this conversation with us, feel free to reach out at worshipmusic@lasierre.edu. See you next time.